Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. I want to give a shout out to our two new Patreons, Jack Dragon and Craig Spawn. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. And if you also want to support the channel, you can find a link to my Patreon down below. In today's episode, I want to talk about this misconception people tend to have about Tesla and their stock price being overvalued. All too frequently, I hear people sit there and say, oh, Tesla's a great company. We like what they do. I think they're doing great stuff for electrification. They're the first ones in it. They're ahead of everybody, but they're way too overvalued. In today's episode, the goal is to kind of dispel some of this FUD or fear, uncertainty, and doubt with regards to Tesla's valuation and whether or not they really should be valued and have a stock price that they currently do. After all, I would argue that the market does tend to be right over the long term, all right? It's a weighing machine. So I wouldn't discount it just because you might have a perception that something is too expensive. And in today's video, the goal is to maybe show you another perspective as to why Tesla has the current valuation it has. All right, before we get into it, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and let's get into it. So I could sit here and talk to you about all the reasons why Tesla's not overvalued. I could talk about the fact that they're growing over 50% year over year and no other automaker is. I could talk about how Tesla has the best margins out of any other company and nobody else does. I could argue that Tesla has margins like Apple or coming up near Apple or software-like margins and nobody else does. We could talk about how Tesla is arguably the leader when it comes to autonomous vehicles. We can talk about what they're doing with humanoids. We can talk about their energy sector, all of that. But in today's episode, I'm not even going to bother with any of that. We can throw all of that away. Today, let's just focus on some key numbers based on 2022 Q1 earnings for Ford, GM, and Tesla. And with regards to Toyota, we'll focus on their Q3 2021 earnings because they're off cycle a little bit. All right, so let's start off by talking about Ford. Ford had wholesales of 966,000 vehicles for Q1, just shy of a million vehicles. Not too shabby, you might think. However, they reported a net loss when it comes to net income. To explain what net income is, just think about your paycheck. Your paycheck, whatever you take home, that's your net income. Same thing goes for auto companies or any company. So Ford actually had a big hit. They had negative $3.1 billion. Now, let's be fair. I'm not here to make a biased video by any means. Ford had a big hit because of their investment in Rivian. Rivian's stock essentially tanked or cratered, and so that took an effect on Ford. So let's back that out, right? Let's pretend that never happened. That leaves Ford with a net income of $2.3 billion. Okay, not too bad. Sold about 1 million vehicles in Q1, $2.3 billion in net income, take-home pay. So what did GM do? Well, GM did a little bit better. GM sold 1.4 million vehicles compared to Ford's 1 million. And Ford didn't have any loss. We don't have to worry about accounting, backing things out or anything. GM came out with $2.9 billion in net income. All right, so just based on those numbers, you can tell GM, at least for Q1, seems to be doing better than Ford. Okay, so now we have to get into Tesla. Tesla had a record quarter for Tesla. Tesla sold 300,000 vehicles. Now, you might think, okay, 300,000, this is the whole point. This is why Tesla's overvalued. Tesla sold 300,000 vehicles. Ford did 1 million. GM did 1.4 million. But this is the part that really starts to paint the truth with regard to the valuation. Even though Tesla did 5x less, essentially, than GM, and about 3x less in sales than what we saw from Ford, Tesla still managed to outdo both of them when it comes to net income. Tesla had a net income of $3.3 billion, despite the fact that they had a substantial delta between sales. All right, that's a big deal. Now, I know a lot of people will also start thinking, okay, but they have the market cap of everybody, including Toyota. Okay, well, let's talk about Toyota. Toyota had actually a really good quarter for Toyota. Toyota sold about 6 million vehicles in Q1. 6 million. All right, that they are by far the leaders. They've overtaken Volkswagen once again. Toyota is killing it. But I would argue the numbers don't look as good as they might appear. Toyota had a net income of $6.2 billion. Now, if you start doing some math, you realize that's not actually that great, but it's still $6.2 billion. Again, Tesla only had $3.3 billion, even though that outpaced GM and Ford with far fewer vehicles. But here's the thing. Think about this. Tesla sold 300,000 vehicles. Toyota sold 6 million vehicles. Tesla made 3.3 billion. Toyota made 6 billion. Do you start to see the difference here? Let me explain it to you in another way. Tesla sold 95% less vehicles than Toyota, yet still made 50% of the same net income. Think about that. 95% less vehicles, but they made 50% of the same income. Okay, well, let's look down the line. GM. Tesla sold 80% less vehicles than GM, yet Tesla outpaced GM on net income by 13%. And when it comes to Ford, Tesla sold 70% less vehicles than Ford, yet they made 43% more in net income. These are the numbers. This is why Tesla is worth what they're worth. Now, when you think about the stock price, you have to always remember the stock price is not about today. The stock price takes into account normally the next 12 months, okay? The next year is what it's looking at. And when you take that into account and you see these numbers and you see how strong and profitable Tesla is as a company, you start to realize this is not a company that's printing money like an auto company. This is a company that's printing money like Apple. I know we use Apple a lot as an example, but you can't help it. It's the same thing that happened with Apple. Everybody used to say Apple is completely overvalued. They have the same market cap as all of these other cell phone companies, the Nokias, the Blackberries, the Motorola's. And look what happened. All right. History may not repeat itself, but it sure damn well rhymes. And here we're seeing a lot of rhyming from the cell phone market into the auto market. So when you think about whether or not Tesla's overvalued, you got to look at these numbers and you really have to see what's happening. And I'll take it one step further. I said I wouldn't mention this, but you have to put this into context now. While Tesla's only making 300,000 vehicles in this last quarter, by the end of this year, there'll probably be about 500 plus thousand per quarter. Now, that means that Tesla is growing extremely quickly, right? To quote Elon Musk, yes, they might hit about 50 or 60% year-over-year growth this year. Now, compared to everybody else, that's just blowing them out of the water. No auto company is growing that fast. But on top of that, again, to quote Elon at Giga Berlin, they'll probably be growing about 90 to 100% year over year in the coming future. Don't forget, Tesla's Secret Master Plan Part 3 is set to come out this year. And what the one hint that we've gotten from Elon is that Master Plan Part 3 is about mass scale. All right, so again, don't underestimate this company. Don't underestimate the valuation. And when you hear other people talk about the valuation of Tesla, just ask them, well, how many vehicles did other people sell? Well, how much net income are they making? And when you start doing the math, it starts to make a lot of sense. Anyways, I want to leave it there. I just thought this would be a good conversation to have, show you some numbers, maybe give a different perspective on how to look at this. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Hopefully this is something you can reflect on, and then you can make your own opinions on whether or not Tesla's overvalued. At the end of the day, I'm just an engineer who likes talking about stocks and investing. So always make your own opinions. Don't be a sheep, be yourself. All right, we're going to leave it there. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. Don't forget, if you want to support the channel, you can find my Patreon link down below. All right, love you all. Peace.